Good morning. Ooh, that sounded like a church full. Beautiful. I want to welcome each of you here this morning. Especially Allie and her fiance, Jason. Yeah, we're pleased to see you. Frank asked me, well, no, he didn't ask me. That's not true. Frank said he was going to pencil me in for the 29th. I'd never been penciled in before, so I didn't know for sure what that meant, and I don't even know if that's legal, but here I am. I'm the worship leader this morning. I've been reading in Genesis again, and I really enjoy the book of Genesis, the culture there, just the way they did things in those days. There's something about the genealogy that has caught my eye. So I just want to let you know that my father is Joe Beachy, and my grandfather is Emmanuel. I can't go any further back than that, so that's where I'm at. Two of the things that we're doing this morning are my favorite things that we do here in church. And one of them is the children's story, and the other one is the quilt. So Louise, you want to take care of that?
We start at number 832. Simon Masangila and Kellen Oakes, we ask you to come forward. Of course, you know that these are special warmth from us, many prayers. You can open them and look at them so that other people can see them too. And let's sing our blessing for them. Lord, lift you up, the Lord take your hand, the Lord lead you forth and cause you to stand, secure in God's word, seeking God's face, abounding in love, abiding in grace. Go with our blessing. God with you.
Thank you, Louise. And for the women that help those quilts, put the quilts together, that's a beautiful gift. I wonder if my daughter Sarah, who's be 40 some years old, and Eric, who's 46, if he still has his quilt yet. Oh, didn't do it then? Well, we need to make quilts for him, if you don't mind, Louise. Okay. I think it's a beautiful gift. Thank you for doing that. When I was asked to be worship leader, I knew what I wanted to share on Monday. After Tuesday's news about the massacre in Texas, I wasn't so sure. I talked to Frank a bit out in the office, and he said, Ken, keep it short and keep it light. Yeah, I can keep it short. But for those of us who are teachers, and when we hear another tragedy in our school, I think it strikes us maybe more personally than those of you who have other occupations. It isn't hard for us to look around our classrooms, our schools, and think, what would I do? Down here at 91, they have practices, I believe, still do. Yeah. There's something about anger that can develop into something stronger than that, and it becomes vengeance. And I don't know what that's all about. Once in a while at school, during the time I was a counselor there, I was a counselor for some time, we would get kids who would talk about hurting other kids, hurting other teachers, using the word kill. And we took that seriously. So the teachers would listen to it. If it was something that they thought really needed some more attention, then they'd spend some time with me. We'd sort things out. Sometimes it just meant that for that day, they're just really angry. It was helpful, it seemed like, to have them write their story down, put their words on paper, read it back to them. Is this who you are? And sometimes the anger was so strong, they had already made plans for what they wanted to do, that our protocol was, we need to involve law enforcement now. We need to take this to another level. So for those students, we would get some mental, emotional help. And that worked pretty well. There was one student that that plan almost didn't work. He was a new student. In fact, I think that's a common thing I heard in those students who had that anger, that feeling of aloneness, that feeling of somebody's making fun of me, cutting me out. I think that one of the things they had in common was that they were fairly new to our school, and that they had moved quite a bit to different schools, and they were all boys. It seemed like when girls had that anger, it turned inward, became depression. But this young man, he was bragging to other students that he had bought a gun to school. Now, kids will brag, yeah. But then one of the students told his teacher, I saw the gun. Ooh, okay. So I was told the principal wasn't there, so I wanted to deal with this. So in the middle of the afternoon, I called the county sheriff out. And of course, when I met with the student, he said, of course not, I don't have a gun at school. I never brought a gun to school. So we went down and we looked in his locker with him. And sure enough, the bottom of the locker was the gun. Yeah. So I don't know what to tell you about that, except that when we think that we have a nice little community here where that nothing's going to happen to us, that we do have a nice community here. But it's not true anymore that nothing's going to happen to us. This week I really struggled with, God, how come you weren't more present at Uvalde. There's some things you could have done. You should have been more, I wanted a superhero to step in there, shut that door that was open, et cetera, et cetera. It was the same kind of intense emotional pain I felt at my brother's suicide. I don't know, God didn't answer me on those. But I think that for those of us who believe in prayer, we need to really lift up those folks in Uvalde, in Buffalo, New York. Somebody listed the number of mass shootings we've had in schools over the years, and the list was over 300. Such pain. Yeah, that's not very light, is it, Frank? No. Charlie picked out a song that I really like. Page 57. Right, Charlie? Holy Spirit. Let's sing.
Would you stand with me if you can? Number 57 in the purple book.
Holy Spirit, come with power, breathe into our aching mind. We expect you this hour, waiting for your strength and light. We are fearful, we are weary, we are weak and selfish too. Bring upon your congregation, give us vigor like anew. Holy Spirit, come with fire, bring us your presence new. Let us as one mighty choir sing our hymn of praise to you. Burn away our wasted sadness and inflame us with your love. Burst upon your congregation in the silence of Holy Spirit, bring your message, burden breeze deep into our tired living, till we strive for work to do. Teach us love and trust in kindness, lend our hands to those who hurt. Bring upon your congregation and inspire us with your word.
And now turn with me to 84. To God be the glory. 84.
To God be the glory, great things He has done. So loved He the world that He gave us His Son, who redeemed His life and our atonement for sin,
At the back of the church is a wooden box with a slot in it for you to put your morning an offering, if you choose to. Let's pray together in thankfulness for what we can give. Father, we give to you today as a response to your great love and goodness to us. We ask that you receive our offering and continue to supply all our needs. May your peace be in our hearts and your grace be in our words. Your love be in our hands and your joy be in our souls. Thank you. Children's story. Jennifer. One of the things I like about children's story is the energy they bring when they come running up here. I don't see any adults come running up here, but I love when the kids do that. Yes, come forward.
Let's see. Oh, Nico, you're so smart. Yeah. Good morning. I have been thinking about this idea of fairness. Do you like things to be fair? What do you think it means when things are fair? What do you think, Nico? Everybody gets the same amount. What do you think? Is that a good definition of fair? Yeah, you think so? All right, so makes you feel good when things are fair. Yeah, how do you feel when things aren't fair? What do you think, Lincoln? Sad? Do you get kind of grumpy? Maybe angry? Yeah. Well, I've been thinking about this fairness thing, but I want to maybe explore it a little bit better. So I'm going to give everybody, even the little ones, come close, come close, come close, come close. I'm going to give you each a phrase to read. Hang on, I'm looking for a specific one. Jack, you're going to get this one. Lincoln, you're going to get this one. You can look at what it says. Benji. Let's see. And if you need help reading it, it's okay, because we have some helpers next to you. All right. All right. So, Jack, can I take this out, do you think? There. Did that work? All right. So, Jack's going to read his. All of these have to do with something you might need. If you read this, there might be something you need. So, let's start with Jack. Jack.
I cut my hand. Just so you know, I did not cut my hand.
Yeah, it's pretending. He's just reading. He didn't really cut his hand. We're okay. Okay. Say it again, Jack.
I cut my hand.
He cut his hand. I think I know what he needs. He needs a Band-Aid. There you go, Jack. Just pretend. That's a stretch. All right, Lincoln, what does yours say?
I don't know.
You don't know? Turn it over.
I broke my leg.
You broke your leg? Wow. Well, I'm just going to be fair here, and I'm going to give you a Band-Aid, okay? I want to be fair. Yeah, yeah. Is that going to help, you think? Maybe. All right. Do you think you could help Benji read his? Oh, either one. Benji?
I feel sad. I feel sad.
He's not so sure. Can you say it? Nico will say it for you.
I feel sad.
His says, I feel sad. Well, in fairness, I'm going to give you a Band-Aid. Does that make you feel better? Yeah, Band-Aids always make you feel better. Yeah, Mateo, what does yours say?
I burned my finger.
Burned your finger. Well, I think a Band-Aid might help that. Here you go. Yeah. All right, let's see what Nico says.
I have poison ivy.
Poison ivy. Well, these are small Band-Aids here. They're really tiny, but maybe that's all the poison ivy you have. Will that help?
I'm not sure what it says. My tooth hurts.
Your tooth hurts? Well, here's a Band-Aid for your tooth. I'm just being fair, you guys. I'm just being fair. Can you read yours for me?
I lost my dog.
You lost your dog? Well, here's a Band-Aid. Well, maybe that wasn't very fair to give everybody exactly the same thing. Do you want to change your mind about what it means to be fair? Yeah, you do? What do you think? Instead of giving everybody the same, how would you define fair now?
Giving everybody what they need.
Oh, giving everybody what they need. Yeah, because we don't all need the same thing. A Band-Aid cannot help you find your dog, and it's not very good in your mouth. You're absolutely right, Mateo. Now, Mateo, this is church. Yeah, and not good for your head either because you have hair on there. This is church, and this actually does have something to do with what Frank's going to preach about and what we come to church to do, which is worship God, learn about Jesus. And here's what I know. You need something else for your broken leg. You do. I know that we don't need all the same things from God. Yeah. We need something different. So when we ask God for help, He's not going to treat us all the same. He isn't going to help us exactly the same. He's going to help us get what we need. But the best thing about any story for me about Jesus or God is then taking that and thinking, okay, if God is going to come and give us each what we need, then it's my responsibility to go out into the world and pay attention to what people need. Pay attention to what your mom needs, or your dad needs, or your brother needs, or your sister needs, or your friends need, or even what a stranger needs. Because that's what's fair.
We gave some food to a stranger that didn't have any food.
Then you gave him just what he needed, Lincoln. And that's the whole summary of this story. All right? And now you have an extra Band-Aid, which means if you see somebody who needs a Band-Aid, you've got one in your pocket.
Well, if you don't, though.
Well, then you could just save it until you find someone that needs it. Is that a good idea? All right.
So we can save it for the rest of our life.
You can save it for the rest of your life if you want to, Jack. You guys are dismissed to go back. And I either missed announcements. You can hang on to it. I don't need it. And you got your Band-Aid. I either missed announcements or Ken didn't do announcements. All right. And my announcement fits right into this because you are needed. Oh, I probably don't. I'll put this back here in just a minute. You are needed to, join us for joyful celebrations with Bridging Cultures. Our first Saturday in the park was a week ago Saturday, and we had over 300 people there. It was so great to be out there seeing people. Since I've been on the board for 2 years, everything has been Zoom. So for me, having been on the board and getting to know people and then seeing them in person, having music and getting a hot dog and just sharing, it was so wonderful. So not only are you needed to come and celebrate with your community and meet your neighbors, unfortunately, you're needed to be an ally too. Most of you out there, some of my favorite people not, but most of you have white skin. And most of the people at Bridging Cultures who were there have brown skin. And unfortunately, that attracted some people in our community to drive by with flags and to show up, to make their presence known. And that was really sad to me. I was only at the picnic for a short time, and that happened when I wasn't there. But it makes some of those people with brown skin feel pretty afraid. And we need to be their allies. So I want you to show up because they need to see that there are just as many white people who care about them, who want to be their friend, who see the value in every human being despite the color of their skin. So you're needed. The next one is June 4th. You are also needed if you would be so willing to come and volunteer for a couple hours. Hand out food, help us set up tents, help us take things down. And I have a sign-up sheet here. So if you want to sign up, I'm ready. I will be here after church, and I would love to put your name down. You can also go on to the Bridging Cultures Facebook page. There's a link there. You can sign up. And I also put some Saturdays in the park we have little business cards that have all the information. So take one of those and put it on your fridge so you can show up and we can celebrate together the diversity of our city. Thanks. I also have Band-Aids in case anybody needs that. I'll put this over there.
Don't forget that we're asking you to take a wind chime and decorate it, put it together, and leave for next Sunday for Pentecost Sunday, because Pastor Steve is creating something up here that we're going to be able to hang the wind chimes on. So those are at the back today if you want to pick one up, and then we want them by Wednesday of this week, okay? Here's one, wind chimes. Also, if you're interested in going to Drift Creek Camp, please register. I don't know that due date, but it's coming up pretty soon, so don't forget to register for Drift Creek Camp. Thank you.
One thing I'm not doing very well at this morning is following the order of service. Is there anyone else with announcements? No? Okay. One of the things that has been a tradition here for, I guess, during our COVID time is doing something called Pass the Peace. Just getting up, greeting people, especially those folks who normally don't come here. Let's greet them and help everyone feel welcome. Let's do that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. It's hard to stop sharing and hugging, and yeah, that's good. It's good. It's good. Charlie, I missed congregational singing there. Do you have a song for us? It was supposed to come after passing the peace. I guess I didn't miss it. It's right now. Yeah. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. Let's you and I sing.
Number 740 in the purple book. And could we, on the first time through, just sing it on Lou? Just sing Lou with it.
Frank will be using John 21:18-23 as a focus for his sharing this morning. I've read through this several times, and I think you've got your job cut out for you, buddy. All right. John 21:18. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and to go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go. He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. And after this, he said to them, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw the disciples whom Jesus loved following them. He was the one who had reclined next to Jesus at the supper and said, "Lord, who is it that is going to betray you?" When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about him?" Jesus said to him, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is it to you?" And so the rumor spread in the community that this disciple would not die. But Jesus did not say that he would not die. But he said, if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is it to you? Frank?
This has been kind of out of control this morning, Ken. It's not getting any better. I can't stand in one spot. This morning's message is from the book of John, the whole book, not just that. And as I always do, I prepared way more than I'm going to be able to deliver. So this morning is more about what I had to edit than what I have to say. And I've been sorting that out all weekend. And this morning I woke up and I went through my regular routine, which includes going outside. And I was standing out there kind of watching it get light, and I looked off into the distance. Craig will appreciate this more than anybody else. I looked off in the distance over Tom, and here comes Stubby. And Stubby's an eagle whose wings are a little too short for his body, and he flies around this area, and I thought, wow. And I don't think this way, so don't think I'm weird, but I thought, here comes Stubby to bless my sermon. And Stubby's getting closer and closer, and he's flying straight at me, and I'm looking at Stubby, and then I realized that's not Stubby, the eagle, and I thought it's a different eagle, and it gets closer and closer, and here's this eagle to bless my sermon, and it was a buzzard. It's not a good sign for this morning. This could be rough. The book of John. I love the book of John. It's my favorite book. It's not my favorite book of the Bible. It is my favorite book, period. I've read it more than any other book, and I love it. And it's a little bit different from the other Gospels. Actually, all four of the Gospels are quite different takes and looks at Jesus' life. But John looks at it not like big picture like Matthew, Sermon on the Mount stuff and all of that. He looks very small picture. Most of the interactions in the book of John are one-on-one, Jesus and somebody else. And I tallied up 34 of them, and my original intent was to present those 34 stories this morning, and we would have been here till Tuesday. But I just picked out then and sorted out and picked out some, but I noticed something about these interactions that are similar all the time. They're similar. One, Jesus relates to a complete variety of people. Rulers, religious rulers, people who can't see, people who are lepers, people who are from Samaria, Greeks. He relates to a number of different people. And I thought that was important. And then we couldn't have had a better children's story because Jesus meets all of these people at their particular point of need. It's always different. It's a different relationship, and you'll see that when I present some of these stories. And then the third thing that I noticed that he almost always does is he invites them to himself, offers himself, believe in me, follow me, trust me, love me. But he almost always includes something else, a directive. But that's where it's different. The directive in each one of the stories is a little bit different. It's personal, it's private. And so those are the observations that I'm going to make this morning. Those are the things I want you to think about. I kind of flipped this sermon on its head. I put the end at the beginning just in case I don't get to the end. So this is the end. You could probably, those of you who have a hard time focusing, probably from now on you can sleep. But I had two things that I thought about this pattern of a relationship. One is Christianity and faith in Jesus is not a cookie cutter Christianity. It was never meant to be, and it never will be. It's different for everybody and looks different for everybody because we all have, Jennifer, different needs. And it's a relationship. Like any other friendship we might have in life. This might sound kind of strange, but all of my relationships have gone the same way, including my relationship with God. There's an attraction, somebody that I like, somebody that's smart, somebody that's clever, somebody that's cute, somebody that's generous, somebody that's kind, and I'm attracted to them. And then I start to get to know them, talk to them, see their warts, their scars, they see some of mine. And pretty soon, people, including God, start to annoy me. This bother me. And I think, why did I even think this was a good idea? Really, it gets that way. And then as we continue and some trust builds and some emotional capital builds, pretty soon something starts to happen. Pretty soon I like them well enough or love them well enough that some of those scars and differences don't matter quite as much. And so I think that's the way it is sometimes with the Lord. As we meet him and we greet him and he comes to live with us and begins to transform us, it isn't always comfortable, but there's enough love to cover the issues. So I'm going to go through some of those stories, but I do have a couple of other things to say. I want to say about why I came to this message this morning, because this wasn't what I was going to originally bring. It was going to be completely different. And it happened on the day that Steve asked me to preach. He asked me to come and fill in for him while he was gone. And that afternoon on the way home, I stopped by and saw a friend of mine, and we got into a conversation, and I really like this guy, respect this guy. He loves the Lord, and he loves to study the Word of God. But here's the rub. He and I could not be more different. We come from a different space. We come to a different conclusion, and we argue, and there's some passion in those arguments. But I'll tell you what, it never, ever gets ugly. I don't think he thinks I'll ever think the way he does, and I'm pretty sure he'll never grow into the right position, mine. But it's not nasty. It's just different. And we both believe in each other that there is some way in which we're trying to faithfully follow God. Then I had a second conversation with a group of people that I really like, the leadership team. It's Thursday night, and it was a long meeting. And there was an agenda item, and we started to discuss it, and Karen knows that it rubbed me the wrong way. And I just sat there. I didn't say anything. I was just getting grumpier and grumpier and crankier and crankier. And pretty soon, Brother Stan looks across the table and says, "Frank, what's on your mind?" And I kind of snarkily said, "You don't want to know." You don't want to know what's on my mind. He said, "Yeah, I really do." He was graceful. And I said, "I feel like I'm in the wrong room." And then I went off on a little rant, all cranky and grouchy, wasn't I? Yeah. And I was embarrassed afterwards. And when I left, I felt like, why did that happen? I don't feel bad at all about what I said, just the way I said it. And so I had to go home and revisit. And I listened to a sermon, one we had a couple of weeks ago, on chapter 13 of John. Love one another. And by this love, this new commandment I give you, love one another. And by this love, people will know that you belong to me, that we belong to each other. And my takeaway from that sermon that influences me this morning is that love isn't something we can generate from the inside or go to a 6-week conference and figure out the right way to love each other. It's something that has to come from God. It has to come from God as we relate to him through Jesus, through the power of the Holy Spirit, and then it pours out to other people. And it's as natural and as organic as our relationship is with Jesus. It's not something we can muster up. And sometimes I think if there's not enough love or you're not feeling the love, step a little closer to the source. It's there. And then one other sermon that surprised me, it was back November 14th. And if you want to go online and listen again or for the first time, Serenity, Columbine spoke. And I'll admit to you, I came that morning not expecting much. I really didn't. Not because it was Serenity, because she's terribly wonderful and probably terrible and wonderful, but it was on 1 Corinthians 13, and I thought, here we go again, another love sermon, the same old, love is kind, gentle, la, la, la. But it was not. It was powerful. And she talked about how difficult it was running the Jubilee Pantry, which they've been called to by God to do, and to love those people with a language barrier and a cultural barrier. And she said at one point, the love just had to be pantomimed. I love that line. It had to be expressed with hands and eyes and looks and hugs. And so all of those influenced the way I'm reading John this morning. So I better get to the text. Oh, one more thing. And this matters probably most of all. And I want you to hear it with the intent that I want to give it. And it's a confession. And those are always uncomfortable in church. That's why I'm looking down. This is my confession. And it's not very specific, so don't get all sweaty. I'm not perfect. Yeah, I'm disappointed there's not more shocked looks on your faces. I'm not perfect. I don't have it all figured out. I don't know all the answers. I don't. But I'll take it a step further. There are a lot of things that I am in my life that I really know I probably should not be. And that bothers me a little bit. But you know what bothers me more? There's a lot of things in my life that I probably should be that I'm not. And to be completely transparent so you know exactly where I'm coming from when I get to the end, if Seth were here and could put the screens down, kind of wreck that whole image, if we put here up on the screen my life, the good, the bad, the ugly, where I am now, what I want now, some of the things that I want to be that I shouldn't be, and that was all up there on the screen for all of you to read, you would go like this. You'd have to look away. I'm not kidding. You'd have to look away. And maybe some of you would start to wonder, how does that guy even come to our church? You might lock the doors when I drove my little truck in. I'm not joking. I'm not kidding. You might wonder, how does he teach our kids in Sunday school, 7, 8-year-old boys? How is he in leadership? Why in the world are we sitting here listening to this man preach? No kidding. It's true. Fortunately, it's true of all of us, right? Okay, John. First words in the book of John, recorded by John, that Jesus spoke were to Andrew. He is a disciple of John the Baptist. They see Jesus go by, and John says, there he goes, the Messiah. And so Andrew just starts to follow him, and Jesus turns around and says these first words that John records. What do you want? Maybe that's why I like the book. What do you want? What is it you're after? What do you want? First words of Jesus to Andrew. And Andrew says, I'd like to come see where you're staying. And Jesus says, well, come along, come see for yourself. And then in that same book, and the next day, in that same chapter, he meets Peter. Andrew goes and says, Peter, we found the Messiah. And Jesus comes to Peter and just says these words. This is the whole transaction. Oh, Simon, son of John, you are now Cephas, Peter, the rock. Good nickname, the rock, right? Whole transaction. And then Philip, follow me. And then we have another transaction that I'm going to skip. And then we have this relationship that I want to go into a little bit in Nicodemus. Completely different guy, right? First, he's talking to some lowly fishermen, guys with no education, follow me. Now we've got a leader, somebody with an education, somebody who's sharp, somebody who knows what's going on in the scriptures. And Nicodemus comes to it at night, maybe because he wanted to be hidden, I don't know, but maybe just because he wanted some alone time with Jesus. And Nicodemus greets him this way. He says, Master, we know that you come from God, because no one could do what you do without being from God. And Jesus opens up to him. You guys know the story, right? Opens up who he is missionally and meets Nicodemus at his point of need, saying, you need to be born again. You need to experience life in the Spirit. How do you not know this? And it's in this conversation that we get John 3:16, right? Everybody knows God loved the world so much, he sent his son, that whoever believes would not perish. It's a wonderful verse. That's a wonderful part of what Jesus tells Nicodemus. But there's another part that I think we miss sometime that I think is equally or maybe more important. He says, my dad didn't send me here to condemn the world. The Father did not send the Son to condemn the world. He sent it to save it. One sheep at a time. So that one's big. Now you want some relationship like whiplash? The next one in chapter 4 is when he's leaving Judea and going to Galilee, and he has to go through the town of Samaria, someplace the Jews really tried to avoid, by the town of Sychar. And he sits down by the well of Jacob and sends his disciples for provisions. And you guys know the story. Out comes this woman with her bucket and her rope to get some water. And Jesus asks her to meet his need. Can you give me a drink of water? And she's stunned. You're a Jew. You're a man. I'm a Samaritan woman. You can't be talking to me. It's actually against your tradition and your law. Why are you talking to me? And he says, well, if you knew who I was, you would know that I could offer you living water. And she says, give me some of this water. And he says, go back home and get your husband. And she said, I don't have a husband. And he says, yeah, I know. You've had 5 husbands, and the man you're living with now is not your husband. So not only is she a Samaritan, not only is she a woman, but she's living kind of a sketch life. Pretty rough, right? But Jesus is right with her the whole way. And the conversation goes on, and she goes back to town and brings these people out. And Jesus, in that interaction with her, at least in the book of John, is the first person that he reveals his deity to. Because they're talking about religion, and she says, well, the Messiah will come explain all these things. And he said, I am that Messiah. Think about that. This is not your top-notch person. But Jesus didn't see it that way. This next one's going to be a lot harder for me. I'll do my best, Jeremy. This is the only gospel that this story's recorded in, and it's the woman who's caught in adultery. The disciples grab some poor woman, drag her through the street, and drop her at Jesus' feet and say to Jesus, what should we do with her? Do you know what the law of Moses says they're supposed to do to her? Execute her. Grab some rocks, throw them as hard as you can, pound her until she's dead. That's the law of Moses. Jesus knows that. Pharisees know that. What do we do, Jesus? John says Jesus doesn't answer. He just kind of crouches down and starts writing something in the dirt. I like to think he was writing something mean about the Pharisees. But he was just drawn. And they badgered him, and they asked him again and again, what are we supposed to do with this woman? You know what it is that we're supposed to do, right, Jesus? And John records that he stands up straight. I would have bent down and stood up, but my knees are killing me. Stand up straight, looked him right in the eyes, and said, go ahead, stone her. Do you remember the story that way? Go ahead, stone her. And whichever one of you doesn't have any sin in your life, you can huck the first rock. And it was quiet. You could hear a stone drop. And it did. Again. I knew this was a hard story for me. And he looked down, got down next to her and said, where are your accusers? And she said, there's none, sir. And he says, neither do I condemn you. And then he says something else that I don't want to leave out, but I do want to say something about it. He says, go and sin no more. I've got to tell you, if I ever hear or see another preacher or person say, yeah, but he said, go and sin no more. Do you know what I'm talking about? Go and sin no more. That is the most ridiculous reading of those words that I can possibly imagine. First, because they're so out of context. What Jesus was saying, I'm sorry. What Jesus was saying is, you are worth it. Your life has value to me, regardless of the space that you're in right now. You can do better. You can be your better self. That's what that's saying. That's the message we should carry in this world when we run up against people who need a little lift, not throwing rocks. Sorry, rant. I'm going to skip a bunch. I have to. I'm running out of time, and I want to get this over. Well, I didn't mean it that way. Nobody wants to listen to me till supper time. I do want to mention the blind man really quickly and the message that Jesus gave him. We know that story, right? The boy healed. He was blind since he was from birth, and he's kicked out of the synagogue, and Jesus goes and finds him and says, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And this blind kid says, "I don't know, I've never seen him." And Jesus says, "It's me." And he says to this blind boy right in front of that crowd, "This is exactly why I'm here, so that blind people can see, and those who think they can see will remain blind." I think that matters in the context of these stories, because the Pharisees sneer at him and said, "What, are we blind too?" And Jesus says, "You know what? If you were blind, you could be healed. But it's when you think you can see that you remain blind." It's right there in that story. It's an important part of this whole message. It isn't when we're blind that we run into trouble. It's when we think we have it figured out, that we can't receive the healing that we need from God. And finally, I want to go to the very last chapter, what was read, and this interaction with Peter. And we all are familiar with it, right? Jesus comes back. They're out there. They haven't caught any fish. He helps them catch fish. He gives them breakfast. They sit down. After breakfast, he starts grilling Peter. "Do you love me? Yeah. Do you love me? Yeah. Do you love me? Yeah." Finally, meeting Peter at that point of need to being reinstated and really kind of delivered from the guilt of his denial. But then he does what he always does. He says, "Peter, come with me. Let's go for a walk. I need to talk to you about what your life is going to look like, what kind of mission I have for you, what kind of things I'm going to expect you to do in this life that you're going to live, and it's not all going to end real pretty." And they're walking along, having their conversation, and Peter looks back and here's John walking up behind him, this John that's always sticking his nose into everybody else's conversation, and says, "What about him? How bad is it going to be for him? What does he have to do?" And Jesus rebukes him. And these are the last words in the book of John. The first are, "What do you want?" The last is, "What is that to you?" What difference does it really make what John's ministry or life is going to look like? What difference does it make to you what my ministry and life look like, or someone else's? Why is it that the church for so many years historically has spent so much of their time trying to make it all look alike? It was never intended to be that way and shouldn't be. And the church historically, if you look back at it, has done its worst work, including killing other Christians, really, when it was trying to get everybody to think exactly the same. Kinda my pet peeve. So I want to end a little bit lighter. I'm going to set this down, and I'm sorry for the length here. Is this still on? Yeah. I need my hands for this one. It's an object lesson. You know what these are? Ruth and I are working on the kitchen. These are sanding blocks. I know we're all Mennonites here, but the worst thing about these is they cost $5 a piece. It's insane. So I went into Pam, my buddy. She likes NASCAR like I do, so we're always talking. She was telling me what I needed to refinish some of the woodwork in my kitchen, including the cabinets. She said, "You're going to need these sponges." And so she showed them to me, and there's me. There's the 40 grit. There's 120 grit, 80 grit, 220. And so I picked up all the ones that she said, "That's $25 worth of sanding blocks right there, guys." And she laughed at me. And she goes, "That's not going to work." She goes, you're going to need like 3 or 4 or 5 of each." I go, "What are you talking about?" And she says, "Yeah, they fill up, they get dirty, they get grime in them and stuff like that." And I said, "No." I said, "I'll figure it out." And so she was right. About a tenth of the way into the project, they're all jammed up. And so I'm trying to vacuum and blow them. I tried this. That made Ruth mad. Stuff flies all over the place. I even was stupid enough to do this. Yeah. Could have been worse. I could have tried to wash them. That turns it all to goo. So what's the story about these sanding sponges? This is what I think the church was intended to be. in community. Because you might listen to what I had to say this morning and think we're all just a bunch of Christian cowboys going our own way. But there is a reason for community, and it's not to make us all get into the same space. The reason there's Christian community is because we all serve a different purpose. This 40 grit is to just get the first crap off. I'm sorry about that. To get the first junk off, right? And it gets kind of packed up. And then you take the 80 grit, completely different purpose, and kind of get it a little smoother and work your way all up to 320. And then you got these dirty sponges. What are you going to do? You know what I finally figured out? I'm not very slow, but I eventually get there. If I took this 80 grit and put it up against the 40 grit and just put it on the edge, I shouldn't do that. It cleans them off pretty good. And I'm not real bright because then I took the 40 grit and tried to do it the 80 grit. It doesn't work. Doesn't clean it. The 120 cleans the 80 pretty good. And on and on and on. That's who we're supposed to be as a church. We're not all the same. We don't all have the same purpose. But we all need each other to get cleaned up once in a while. And I think if we focus on that, we will do our best work. Amen.
Let's stand and sing 644. 644. I was thinking about it this week and the healing that needs to happen. I thought of this song.
Great
We have just sung about spirit of comfort, spirit of kindness, spirit of compassion, fill each heart. Would you please join me in our prayers for the people this morning by turning to 996 in Voices Together. Number 996. We want to remember our pastor Steve Bomar and Stan Oyer, who are at meetings of our denomination this weekend in Kansas City, that there would be a spirit of discernment among those gathered. And also we want to remember those who are struggling with health challenges, some with certain treatments, surgery, and recovery. So as we go to prayer, we think of this community and lift those that we know and love within this congregation also. 996. Listening God, you hear our prayers before we speak, yet welcome our praying. Therefore, we come with confidence to lay our requests before you. We pray for Christians everywhere, for our denomination and congregation, for strength to persevere in faithfulness. We pray for the whole people of God. God of grace. We pray for the nations of the world, for all leaders, and for those who make policy decisions. We pray for the well-being of our global community. We pray for the earth and all living creatures, for regions and species at risk, and for the sharing of resources. We pray for the wholeness of creation. We pray for those who are overcome by violence, for victims of injustice and oppression, for those in poverty or pain. We pray for all who need healing and peace. We pray for those who endure trials, for those who are dying, for those who mourn. We pray for all in need of comfort and hope. Lord, you have heard the prayers of your people, and we rest in the comfort of your care as we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Frank, for sharing. And Jennifer, for your story. It's almost like you got together with the kids and practiced first, didn't you? I really appreciated that you knew each of their names and you used their names during the story. Names are so important. Congratulations to Simon and Kellen. And Kellen, you got some big games coming up this week. Tuesday? Tuesday. Yeah. He's going to take, he and the rest of them are going to take this on to state. They're going to win it this year. So says Mom. That's great. I'd like to read, Charlie, I really appreciated the songs. They spoke to me this morning. Healer of our every ill, light of our tomorrow, give us peace beyond our fear and hope beyond our sorrow. Amen. Go in peace.